What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here with Mike Kaye for a delayed post-game edition. Just to give you some background real quick. This is the No Huddle show, if you weren't aware, by the way. But,
just so you know.
Just so you know, if you clicked on our podcast for some reason and don't know what you're listening to. So I actually wasn't at the game on Sunday. I did follow along. I read all of Mike's stories. But I was covering the Giants-Bears game. So we both were saddled with some very poor football game. Like, I don't even call that Bears-Giants game a football game. It was so bad. I won't talk about that too much, but the Giants are bad. So are the Bears. So that Eagles win over the Bears doesn't look as amazing in retrospect, is what I would say.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot to take in, a lot of big picture stuff to think about. I think the biggest thing, we probably should just get into this right away, is Carson Wentz. He obviously has taken a lot of criticism. We both have covered how some of it's unfair, some of it's fair. There's like a lot of extremes. Like there's no bones about it. Like this was just an awful performance. I know some have debated whether this or the Saints game last year was worse. You probably have to say this one is worse just because this game was actually close. So if he doesn't turn the ball over 4 times, they probably win the game, right?
Yeah.
If they were there. Like I feel like that's a safe thing to say, right?
It's easily a bottom 3 performance of his career. I think the only game that maybe was worse was the Bengals game his rookie season.
Yeah.
Like this was
when
really
you factor in like context though, yeah.
Yeah, this was something else. Like he was incredibly inaccurate in the first half. Like the numbers, if you watch this game on your phone or if you watch just the box score, you have no idea what happened because this was one where the stats don't really match up. He completed 73.3% of his passes, but he also only threw for 5.7 yards per attempt. So he was dumping a lot of passes off towards the end of that game. He got a little hot towards the end when he came back from his hand injury, but the first half was atrocious.
Yeah, he has a hand injury now, by the way.
Right. Oh, by the way. He says he's fine, though. The x-rays were negative. He's going to undergo some more tests later in the week. We'll get into that a little bit later.
We'll say nothing today.
Right. But, no, everybody wants to say, he was without his top 2 wide receivers. He was without 2 of his top linemen for most of the game. He was without his top running back. And that's fine, but there were opportunities to make plays in that game. He missed a wide-open Miles Sanders in the red zone. He overthrew Zack. He overthrew Jordan Matthews. He overthrew J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He just was not accurate.
Did he have 1 or 2 interceptions?
2.
So what happened on those?
1, he basically threw to a well-covered, I believe it was Zack. It was to one of the tight ends, and he was picked off by Bradley McDougall. And then he had another one. I'm trying to. My brain is kind of.
It was a while ago at this point. But,
yeah,
the point being they were bad throws, and then he also has had that fumbling issue.
Mm-hmm.
Also, his whole career actually. But
yeah, the fumbling
fact
issue
that it hasn't gotten better is like a problem.
So a lot of people will say, it's not his fault that he's sacked sometimes, but it's a matter of pocket awareness, and
people. Sorry to cut you off, but like people who say that like he's second in the NFL since 2016 in fumbles, like just. It's more than the offensive line. Like no other quarterback besides Jameis Winston has fumbled it more. So it's he shoulders some of that responsibility.
Well, and I think if you look at the numbers, how good his offensive line's been, he's probably sacked a lot less than Jameis is.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of other quarterbacks, it comes down to pocket awareness. He just has not held on to the ball well. Now, one of his fumbles came on a botched handoff to Miles Sanders.
Which is a play I'm sure we have to talk about.
Right, Miles Sanders. Doug Pederson and Carson Wentz both said that it was a new play in the playbook. There was some confusion.
Why are they doing it?
Miles Sanders took some blame for it after the game.
It was a delayed handoff, basically, right?
Yeah, in theory, but like it looked like Miles took a wrong angle to it, and they both collided.
But like, so they were they needed like a yard or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 3rd and 1.
So you're
second and 1.
But so you're doing a play where like he has to go far to get to the line of scrimmage, and like I just like don't understand the thought process. And it's a new play, and you're running into the right side where you have 2 backups playing, Matt Pryor and Vaitai. I don't know how Pryor played, but I know Vaitai played very poorly.
Pryor was okay.
Well, all things considered. And it's like Doug has made a lot of like strange calls like that this year, and
he gets cute. Cute. I mean, it's been a problem, and they lack imagination. And
yes.
And the cute plays aren't like necessarily brilliant plays. They're just like it's hard to explain like in a way that you're not mocking him, but it's like it just doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest. I'm really surprised by his lack of originality when it comes to short yardage plays. And you know what? Jay Ajayi came in and had 2 really good runs, and then they got away from him, and then he struggled because they tried to be a little bit more creative. Miles Sanders, you'll see that he ran for 63 yards on 12 carries. That's terrific because it's a 5.3 yards per carry mark. That said, during the first half of the game, it was a lot like Carson Wentz, where he was like kind of moving around and bobbing and weaving, and he left a lot of
yardage side instead of north to south.
Right, he left a lot of yardage out there. Like, I think he realistically could have ran for over 100 yards in this game.
Seahawks defense isn't good, by the way, which is like the most alarming part about it.
Right, but like Sanders caught some fire in the third and fourth quarter, and that's what helped his stats. But like overall, I just wasn't really impressed by him or Wentz, and I think they shoulder a lot of the blame for this.
So let's talk about Wentz a little bit. So it's 2 straight games that he's been bad. I know, you have to factor in that he doesn't have all the guys. I get that. But over the last 5 games, if he doesn't get better over the last 5 games, how concerned are you about the future of this team going into the offseason? If he keeps playing, it looks like it's a confidence issue now. If he's inaccurate, he's, his decision making, he's questioning himself, it seems like, when he's out there. If that continues for the last 5 games, what confidence is this? Because their entire future is built around him. They gave him that contract. They need him to be the guy, and if he's not, then I don't know what they do.
Yeah, I mean, not great. Not great. You've seen the Redskins defense, right? You've seen the Giants defense, right?
Yes.
You've seen the Cowboys defense, right? You've seen the Dolphins, right? If he can't play well against those teams, I think there's a legitimate problem. Look, he's going to face a quartet of matchups against teams that are currently 2-9. And then he's going to face a Cowboys team that played well defensively against
has played well against the Eagles, basically.
Well, the defense played well against the Patriots.
Fair.
Even though the Patriots probably should have won by,
the
10
Patriots also
points.
had a lot of the injured, all their receivers were injured.
Right, and they missed 2 field goals. So 10 points.
NFL's a weird league.
Yeah, right. So, I just kind of think Carson, we can talk about everything around Carson that's not going well, but we can also say that, hey, he's had opportunities. And I think when you have opportunities against bad defenses, you have to take advantage. I don't think the Seahawks are a bad defense. I think they're a mediocre defense. They're a middling defense, if that's fair. The Patriots are obviously a very good defense. They just haven't been able to get anything done. And you brought up the confidence issue, and I think it's a great point. I think he's regressed mentally.
In terms of his processing and all that
right.
stuff, yeah.
And it's not the product of him. It's the product of the fact that nobody can catch passes. It's the product of, hey, you target Zach Ertz too much. It's the product of
all of it, yeah.
Hey, they can't supplement the offense because Howie Roseman won't, forgot where the pedal was. You know what I mean? The guy's whole thing was, we're not going to take our foot off the pedal. They haven't done anything for the offense outside of signing Jordan Matthews. This has been an utter failure as far as cultivating chemistry on offense. And it began with trading for Golden Tate. Look, I know...
Yeah, ever since then.
Yeah, I know Nick Foles went on that run. Nick Foles has been terrible in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
That needs to be said. He's been terrible. And he had some bad games during that stretch that a lot of people...
He had some bad games in 2017.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, in both years.
Both years.
Yeah, he hasn't been perfect. Bringing Golden Tate into this ecosystem and then choosing Nelson Aguilar over him is the root of this issue. And it's not that, hey, they should have signed Tate over keeping Aguilar. That's not the case. It's they were so good at figuring out fits in 2017 that when they brought in somebody in 2018 and didn't know what to do with him, that became a problem. And if you want to point to Frank Wright as being a guy who understands the offense and understands how to cultivate chemistry within the group, not just at the quarterback position, I think that's valid. Mike Groh is essentially the passing game coordinator, Doug Pederson admitted the other day. Not a great look. Now you can finally really, genuinely throw hammers at him because this passing game has been so unimaginative. They did a lot of pre-snap motion. which worked in the first half against the Patriots game. It did not work all that well against Seattle, and they never super adjusted to it. We can talk about them missing Nelson Aguilar and Alshon Jeffrey. Guess what? They've been terrible on offense with the two of them.
The receivers JJ and Greg Ward look better than they have in weeks.
We can talk about them missing their best two offensive linemen, Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks. Well, their record was 5-5 with them. So,
So you kind of are talking about what I wanted to talk about, and I think it's something that I don't know if it's flown under the radar, but I think it's their biggest problem, even bigger than Howie or Carson. It's the offensive coaches have just not done a good job of developing their players or putting them in positions to succeed since 2017. Like I was thinking about it, who has gotten better since 2017 on offense? You could say Isaac Seumalo and Brandon Brooks, and that's all Jeff Stoutland. Other than that, who?
Yeah, I think Jeff Stoutland's easily the best coach.
Yeah,
in this roster.
so he's like separate from because Doug coaches up everybody else pretty much.
Right.
Like he's not coaching the offensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean,
so I think a lot of this falls on Doug. Carson doesn't leave. They don't roll him out of the pocket at all. Mm-hmm. And he's good at that. Like I don't know if this is different than the Chip Kelly situation, but it does feel like other teams have just solved Doug, and he's like having trouble adjusting.
Yeah, I mean, we've had back-to-back
big picture. Like within games, sometimes he's good, but like overall, I don't know if he is anymore.
We've had back-to-back weeks where opposing defenses have said, "Hey, we know what's coming." There's
the guy in the last night.
Yeah, Seahawks.
Seahawks. I forget who it was that said it. Basically said, KJ Wright. He said that they were calling out Eagles plays before they were coming.
Right, and
that shows a lack of. I know they're limited by the players they have, but you can only use that excuse so many weeks.
Right, and when you have the only look, so they're without 5 notable players. Only one replacement really stood out in that game, and it was Greg Ward, and that's a low bar because Greg Ward only had 6 catches for 40 yards.
By the way, one more criticism I wanted to levy that I just forgot was it looks even worse that they put Andre Dillard at right tackle at all. He was not ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, I admit it. I was in favor of it just because of how it helped from a talent and a versality standpoint.
They should have seen this in practice. There's no
right. We don't get to see practice, so I don't really.
I know Vitae wasn't good, but you should have had him in there from the beginning.
We brought up Brandon Brooks leaving the game. We should acknowledge.
Yes.
He acknowledged on Monday that he had a setback with his anxiety disorder. He was throwing up a lot. The nausea just didn't settle. Listen, this guy is an absolute role model for anybody who has anxiety disorder.
He's talking about it.
As somebody who's dealt with anxiety their entire life, I can tell you I could never imagine being in the situation that he's been in. And he's the best right guard in football. It's not even close. So
his whole thing is that it's because he expects perfection out of himself. And I know last week he didn't have his best game, so it's possible. I mean, and Lane Johnson is his best friend on the team, and I know he's been there for him. And Lane wasn't even allowed to be in the stadium on Sunday because I actually didn't realize that was part of the concussion protocol that you're not allowed to be on the sideline.
Right? Yeah, you got to be in a booth.
I'm not going to try and diagnose it, but it's you don't blame him at all. I don't think anybody blames him for leaving the game.
No, and credit to the Eagles, they take this very seriously.
But I imagine he'll be back next week. Who knows? But I imagine he'll be back for the Dolphins. They don't need him against the Dolphins.
Yeah, they do. This offensive line
that's true. They can't take away anybody from this team right
now. But let me say this.
But the point being,
let me say this. Think about it. You've got to pick up the load for a rookie who doesn't really know what he's doing at right. I mean, they struggled almost immediately, and I think as the guy who's an all-pro, as the guy who has only given up 1 sack this entire season, there was a lot of pressure on him to perform in this game. He didn't have his safety net in Lane, who is well documented, has been a huge supporter of his during his anxiety battles. And I just think it's, it wasn't an ideal situation for him. I can't blame him for feeling the way that he did. I'm not going to say he suffered the anxiety attack because he had to play next to Andre Dillard, but there are a lot of optics there and a lot of pressure on him in this game, and they did miss him pretty significantly. Big V came in and struggled almost immediately at right guard. They made an adjustment at halftime, benched Andre Dillard. Vitae moved out to right tackle, and they brought in Matt Pryor. And as you mentioned, but Pryor was actually kind of okay.
I was saying, notably after the game, I saw that Jason Peters said he'd be willing to move to right tackle if it came to it, and he said he would talk to the coaches about that. That might be their best form of action if Lane is out again, because then you could put Dillard at left tackle, where he's been pretty good this year, actually. Hopefully this isn't like a mental setback, because when you struggle, it can be. So that's why that was a particularly egregious mistake, I think, in retrospect. In the moment it kind of made some sense, I guess. But the idea of moving Peters right, like he'd be more likely to handle it then. And he's played some right tackle in his career, I believe.
Yeah,
too.
he did in Buffalo, but
that'd be interesting.
The only thing that I worry about is Pederson has said that Peters is so entrenched at that spot, that's why they haven't moved him in the past. John Clark from NBC Sports Philadelphia said that Lane's supposed to be back next week. So,
concussions are weird though. So he's
exactly.
not out of protocol. Like Sterling Shepard on the Giants was cleared of protocol on a Friday, and then by Sunday they had a Monday night game. He was feeling symptoms again, and he went back into the protocol and missed 3 more weeks. So, weird things happen with head injuries.
Yeah, and I'll say this: look, I don't fault the staff for the Andre Dillard thing. It was a clear mistake.
Yeah.
But think about it this way, okay? If Vaitai starts at right tackle, Andre Dillard and Brandon Brooks leaves, right? So they're forced to move Matt Pryor in there, and then you have a left tackle that can't play any other positions.
Yeah.
So, giving him the practice, it set you up to where, if he struggles, you have Vaitai to fill in for him, but the other way around, it's kind of hard to put Dillard in that position when he's never practiced at right tackle. So not only does he not have a week of practice to kind of adjust, but, so they were kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't in that situation. And the reason why you would fault them, if you did fault them, is that they didn't cross-train him earlier in the season.
Yeah,
and I think that's
the thing.
Part
You threw him into the water in the middle of the week, basically. But, another criticism, and I know this is like a popular one on Twitter because this guy's become such a popular why don't they play him guy, and that's Greg Ward. I think it's easy to be hyperbolic with this. I don't think they would have won 3 more games if they had played him all season. Mm-hmm. But just seeing him get 6 catches, which Matt Collins and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and even Nelson Aguilar have been unable to do all year. So clearly there's something just right there that he has with Carson Wentz. Mm-hmm. Why is this guy not on the roster all year, and why is he not playing over Matt Collins? It just looks... It almost was worse that they played him this weekend. He played so well because it just it dumbfounds me. That's not like Howie Roseman's dealing with the practice squad, right? That's a Doug Pederson decision.
Well, I think both of them do
together,
have a say, but
if Doug sees something in practice, then he could be like, all right, let's call Greg up.
Yeah, I Greg seemed like the obvious guy to bring up because he's been around for 3 years, but it's just the optics of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside now averaging over 17 yards per catch.
He looked pretty good, I think.
Yeah, and in big situations, he made a catch that set up...
targeted that much, but... Yeah.
Right, but he made a great catch towards the sideline that set up their only touchdown of the game.
And then the week before, he had that long catch late in the game.
He's... In those 2 positions, they put him in position to play like he did at Sanford. Go up for the ball, show athleticism in that regard. He's not going to beat anybody deep, but... he can win one-on-one battles. And I talked to him after the game, and he said, when Carson told him the route concept that they wanted him to run, he knew he was throwing to him because, oh boy, this is like what I did in college. This is like the perfect play for me.
You guys might hear my dog drinking water in the background right now.
Listen,
he drinks really loud.
You got to stay hydrated. Believe me, I know. I haven't had anything to drink all morning.
You probably should before you go ahead. I'm going to give you some beverages to leave with.
Sweet.
Actually, yeah. We'll figure that out.
Riding solo. It's the time.
But yeah, so we should say on the positive side, the defense again did its job at the very it wasn't maybe as good of a performance as the week before. You were talking to me before the podcast. They had a lot of drops and wide open plays that Russell Wilson just gonna make. It sounds like Jalen Mills didn't have as good of a game this week, but they still held another team. What was the final score?
It was 17-9.
Another team below 20 points.
So they've held all 4 of their last opponents under 17 points.
But they lost the last 2.
Right, and that's a very big issue.
Yes.
I spoke to Malcolm Jenkins after the game, and Jenkins said that they need...
That quote was so interesting to me.
What?
The one about just get a kick. Like the fact that they're so he basically, sorry to cut you off and like just take your line, but his quote was essentially like the offense should be happy if they end a drive in a field goal or a punt because it's not a turnover. It's like they're
right, yeah.
Like it's kind of the sad state of affairs that this offense. Right now, it's just like, just don't turn it over. That's our plan. Don't turn it over. Like that's where they're at right now.
Well, and I think Malcolm is trying to say, put the pressure on us. We know that you guys are banged up. You guys have carried us when the defense has been banged up in the past. I actually thought it was very diplomatic because he really had a solid game. And
Malcolm did, right?
Yeah, and it's easy to be frustrated there. Brandon Graham said the same thing. You try not to be frustrated. Like, they know Lane's coming back. They know that they have 5 more games to play. Really, in the grand scheme of things, I hate to say this loss doesn't matter, because it does. But with the Cowboys losing to the Patriots, like, really, this is like a control your own destiny thing, because if they win all 5 of their next games,
Chip Kelly would say destiny is predetermined already, so...
Chip Kelly is also a pretty terrible coach, but hey, maybe he'll become a one of those card readers after his coaching career ends. Cards,
fortune teller, yeah.
So again, what I'll say is this: I think this defense is feeling very confident. We've said it before, even though Jalen Mills had a couple of down moments in this game. This defense has played significantly better since he and Ronald Darby returned. I actually thought Nigel Bradham played relatively well outside of giving up the 58-yard rushing touchdown in the fourth quarter. I think overall, this defense is getting back to where it needs to be. Obviously, they have a group of players that knows the defense has been around. There's really no new faces if you really look at it. No new faces in the secondary. Everybody at linebacker has been around. The defensive line has pretty much been the same for the last 2 years. So, like, you have a lot of experience and you've got guys healthy again. And I think that benefits you down the stretch because you've been in those battles before. On offense, it's the other way around, right? I mean, you've got some new faces. Matt Pryor played his first legit offensive snaps this past game. Like, you're kind of just trying to figure it out. So if the defense has to make plays for you, that's just what it is. Like, I mean, if the defense scored in this game, I actually think they win it. You know what I mean? Like, Russell Wilson isn't a turnover-prone guy, and he threw an interception. They sacked him 6 times. They hit him 10 times. Like, the defense did a really good job. I think Jim Schwartz is coaching very, very well. I know there are some people that speculated that he was coaching for his job during the second half of the season. I don't see that at all. I think
if that was true, he's fine now.
Well, yeah, he's knocking it out of the park. This offense just needs to do something. And I think if Jordan Howard can return in the next couple of weeks, they're going to be in really great shape. I don't think Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar matter as much as people want to say things. Having Lane Johnson will definitely help. Having Brandon Brooks will definitely help. People need to get over the whole wide receiver thing because that's not changing. It's not like
this is who they have.
This is who they have, and they've got to make do with it. And they could have altered it during the trade deadline, but it just didn't happen.
So, as we see it right now, like, do you think Mike Groh is fired this offseason?
Do they make the playoffs?
I mean, I don't think they do.
I don't know. I just kind of feel like this team is one of those teams that just like kind of
gets in, and then everybody's safe.
Yeah, and then they get killed at home in the
because who they play?
They'd either play the Vikings or the Saints, I think, or the Vikings or the. Excuse me.
Dying over there.
Yeah, man, it's been a rough couple of days.
I'm gonna pull up the playoff picture right now.
I think it would be the Vikings or somebody else.
So the Eagles would be 4. So they would play either Vikings or. Seahawks and Vikings are like the clear 5 and 6 right now.
I think they could beat the Seahawks. They can beat the Vikings if Kirk Cousins has a Kirk Cousins game, but like again, he hasn't really had a Kirk Cousins game
since Zack Brown talks smack.
Right. And remember the Vikings beat them last year.
Pretty like locked in so it's pretty much the Cowboys division is the only thing that's pretty open
right now. Yeah. I mean, it's Cowboys.
The Rams are like they're 2 games behind the wild card, and they're not in the division race. So that's actually, and they're 6-4. So the Eagles have a better chance of making the playoffs than the Rams right now.
And I said that after the Ramsey trade.
But as of right now, the Eagles' pick is worse than the Rams one.
Right. But what's interesting is the Cowboys play the Rams.
Yeah, they do. That's a good point.
And that doesn't really matter in common opponents. And I don't even know if it really gives the Eagles wiggle room because the Eagles have to beat all their division rivals because right now Dallas is 4-0 in the division. They have a Week 17 matchup against the Redskins that they're definitely going to win.
They play the Bills and Bears coming up, and those are 2 games the Eagles won. So if the Cowboys lose either of them, that's good for the Eagles.
Right. So common opponent, Zach's talking about common opponents.
That's the second tiebreaker.
Right. Right now, the Cowboys are 4-4 in common opponents, while the Eagles are 5-3, so they have a 1-game advantage. That said, while the Cowboys can continue to lose, unless they lose 2 games, the Eagles really have to win out.
Yeah.
Because the Dolphins are a common opponent, and then obviously all the division games that they have are common.
They have to win all their division games in order to win because the Cowboys are 4-0. Yeah.
Right. So if that said, if
Dallas
loses to Los Angeles and to if they lose to Los Angeles and they lose to the Bills on Thanksgiving, right? Those are also the Bills are a common opponent. The Eagles could stand to lose to the Dolphins. That said, if they lose to the Dolphins, you can pretty much throw. Yeah, it's over.
And also, I've said this before. Like, there's no reason to think the Eagles would win 5 games in a row, other than people just looking at the schedule and saying, "Oh, those games aren't so bad."
Right. I mean, keep in mind, the Giants are 2-9. They play them twice. The Redskins are 2-9. They play them once, and then they play the 2-9 Dolphins, who don't seem like they can beat anyone outside of bad teams. Are the Eagles a bad team? Well, we're about to find out. So yeah, realistically, the Eagles have to go 10-6 to win this division. The Cowboys can go 9-7 in theory.
Do you actually think the Eagles will go that?
Ask me after the Dolphins game, because if they lose, I mean, well, here's the thing, like.
But if they win that game, that's still going to change your opinion, though.
Well, no, it will. They have to beat the Dolphins by 2 touchdowns.
Okay,
this has to be like
how they beat them. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I got to see how they do. I'm not ready to rule them out yet.
They should just air it out and hope that Carson Wentz gets Carson Wentz's confidence back. Just throw it a lot.
I've said this the last 2 weeks. The Cowboys have played very sloppy football over the last since coming back from the bye. They do not look like the same team that they were.
Jerry Jones was a sad old man last night. Or angry old man.
Yeah, he was. And I do wonder if they lose another one, if the wheels really fall off. Because the defense isn't good. And the offense that has normally been good has not really been able to put up a lot of points.
By the way, the positives of if the Cowboys finally moved on from Jason Garrett is that he might just go down the street in the division to the Giants. So
what a world.
The NFL is so funny how they just like shuffle the same guys over and over again.
Well, in theory, there aren't a lot of really great candidates. You can talk about, Rule and... who's the other notable college? Lincoln Riley. Yeah,
but I see Giants fans pulling for Mike McCarthy a lot, but he was good because of Aaron Rodgers. He didn't.
Yeah, I don't know if I would. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I see a lot of comments on our page.
Also, remember, it's tough to win a Super Bowl with 2 different teams. It just doesn't really happen. So,
well, a team. We're not going to talk too much about the Giants, but like a team like that should find like someone in the middle between a complete rookie coach and a veteran coach, like someone who's a smart offensive mind.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
But yeah, so the Eagles have what should be an easy game on Sunday. I'm excited to go to Miami for the first time.
Oh, this is your first time ever going?
First time ever. I've been in the airport.
That airport's terrible.
I had a weird layover there one time.
Every layover there is weird, to be fair.
But it was like 75 degrees there the other day. I'm just very much looking forward to that. It'd be nice to just like have a positive, like, blowout win for the Eagles, which just never happens anymore.
And it coincides with my first mock draft of the season.
Oh, is yours coming out next week?
Next Monday.
Have you started working on that?
Not yet. That should be fun.
Mine's coming later in December.
Yeah, you always luck out.
By the way, Thanksgiving coming this week.
It is.
If we don't we're going to try and get a pod before that, but if we don't, have a great Turkey Day.
Yeah,
It's one of my favorite holidays for sure.
Yeah. So, hot take: I'm not a huge fan of turkey.
Not a huge fan. I think you were going to say the holiday.
Oh no, I mean I just like it. A lot of the food doesn't like really.
So do you like all the other dishes?
Yeah. Okay. I love all the sides. Like,
all right, so at least you're not a monster.
Right, I'm not a monster.
See, I don't like stuffing, which I know is people get passionate.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I'm not a huge stuffing guy.
We typically go to like a steakhouse or something because like I'm like a big steak guy.
Anyway, tradition is tradition.
Yeah,
But yeah, so we'll
excuse me.
We can wrap up on that note. You gotta get a press conference. I still have to help a little bit on Giants before the Dolphins game. But we'll end on that note. Let us know what you're thinking about the team right now. Comment on our podcast. Write us a review. We'll read them on the next show. Sorry we took so long to get you guys this one, but we're gonna have a post-game pod next week, and if they lose, it'll be even more negative one than this.
Hey,
man, if they lose that game, that'd be
man,
that'd be tough sledding. All right,
yeah.
We'll end on that note. Have a good one, guys.